It was 8 weeks and then it was another 5 weeks. You just had to try and pay what you needed to pay, but you weren't paying your rent or your council tax. But I'm getting my money every month now, the same date. It's just the amount you get though. It's like, it was bad enough when I was on 102 I think a week. It was bad enough then, but now it's 72 a week. It's like, you cannot do it. It's impossible, it really is.
Ian's been on universal credit for about 6 months. He says he's not been under pressure to look for work, which he thinks is down to poor health.
So I've met you here at a food bank. How often do you come here?
Once a week.
And what do you do for the rest of the week for food?
I get food out of the bins now and again, which I did a couple of days ago. Sandwiches.
How old are you, Ian?
54.
Did you imagine life to be like this at 54?
Not as bad as it is, I don't think. I knew without a job like it's going to be really, really difficult, but I didn't think it was going to get as difficult as what it is. So it's getting out of hand now. If you're not in a family, you might as well not exist. If you can't buy your own house, you might as well not exist.
Ian later tells me he'll be receiving an additional allowance for caring for a friend, so is now more optimistic about getting by on universal credit without work. But what if universal credit is actually putting you off finding work?
I have been on the universal credit system as a carer, which means I don't have to actively seek work at this point in time because my daughter receives disability allowance. Well, I've received my first payment in July. It went, I suppose, as smoothly as it could, apart from the fact that I didn't get the amount I was expecting, and also I subsequently found out that despite keeping them informed, I had a legacy debt that's accrued by having claimed tax credits.
How much is that debt?
£2,800.
In 2012, Lynn was made redundant from a well-paid role in the public sector. She was able to find short-term consultancy jobs, but increasingly had to depend on benefits to get by. She sold her 2-bedroom flat to make ends meet, and now she and her 2 teenage daughters live in privately rented accommodation.
The option is to either go back into well-paid work, which isn't necessarily available, or to, in terms of like downsizing or trying to manage within the benefit system, then that's not going to be possible under universal credit.
Lynn feels it would be too complicated to accept ad hoc consultancy work while on universal credit.
It's too unstable, so if you have high peak months like seasonal, or you get a contract that's 3 months but you don't work for 2, but you earn that amount, then you're going to in and out of the benefit system. You can't wait 6 weeks every time. I'm an extremely resourceful person, and now I'm in the position where through the austerity measures that the government have implemented and the system of support has left me in this situation more than I've left myself.
I would be better off handing me taxi badge in and going and signing on, and I would get more money by not working, which I can't understand at all.
Robert's a self-employed taxi driver. When he applied for universal credit, an appointment was arranged for him to prove he was self-employed, but on the day of the interview, he was offered a fixed taxi fare of £90, which he took instead. The appointment was eventually rescheduled, but he missed that one too.
You missed 2 appointments?
Yeah.
But it was to take work?
Yeah. Part of your claim commitment is you can't refuse paid work, but you must attend all interviews. How can you do both? You're desperate for money. That's the option you're going to take every time.
Robert's payments started eventually, which he combined with his taxi earnings, But in September he was thrown by a much lower payment than he'd expected. It tipped him over the edge. Unable to pay the taxi company he was working through, they parted company. Robert was suddenly unemployed.
I hid in my bedroom for nearly 2 weeks, and I only went out of the bedroom to go to the toilet. My children went to stay with my parents for a little while, purely because I didn't have the money to feed them. Because they weren't there, I got more depressed. I didn't open any of my mail. I wasn't answering my phone.
Adding to an already bad month, rent arrears that predated his time on Universal Credit were about to become a problem. He visited his GP one day. When he returned home, with a sick note and antidepressants, he found that the locks had been changed.
I had been given 7 days to remove my possessions and to leave the property, and the 7 days were up. That's why they sent the bailiffs round and changed the locks and everything.
But you didn't know that? You hadn't been opening your mail?
No.
Robert discovered that September's low payment was because of problems with something called the minimum income floor, which is an assumption about a self-employed person's monthly earnings. As the primary carer of 2 children under 16, Robert's calculation should have been based on a 25-hour working week, meaning they'd expect him to earn about £800 in a normal month. But instead, they'd used a 35-hour week and assumed he'd earned more than £1,000. Because the error meant they expected him to get more in earnings, they paid him less in Universal Credit.
They said, don't worry, we'll fix the mistake. Just treat it like they'd put the wrong postcode on a letter or something. It cost me my livelihood.
Robert received a letter admitting the mistake, and his monthly payment was adjusted. But in reviewing his case, they also calculated that in the initial months he'd actually been overpaid by
£717.59 and a request to make an arrangement to pay it back. It's one mistake after another.
Robert's now taxi driving again. Unsurprisingly, he has no faith in Universal Credit. He takes particular issue with the minimum income floor, which doesn't recognise that sole traders may end up earning less than the national minimum wage if they have a bad month.
If I don't make that minimum income floor, I don't get any extra money, any help at all.
When Universal Credit came to Newcastle, it promised to bring fairness, simplicity and an incentive to work. And it has for some. But for others, it's yet to prove that it's brought any one of these things, let alone all 3.